Hi there, this is Jeanette for Whimsy Stamps, and today I wanted to share with you how you can create your own paper flowers. So often we use these on our cards or in scrapbooks, and you can actually make your own. I used the Whimsy Stamps Peony Flower Die to create the flowers you see here. The leaves were also created using the same die set, and then I did layer a few more die cuts on top of the card just to embellish it a little bit more, make it a little bit more intricate and interesting looking. So I will list all the supplies that I used below this video on YouTube, or you can check it out on my blog. So the paper that I used a heavy cardstock weight for the card itself. So I cut my paper in half, and this paper here is more like printer paper weight, and that's what I'm going to be using to cut out all the die cut elements. I'm just going to create a crease here using my bone folder to have a nice crisp crease for my card base. And once that's done, I can set it aside. And then I'm going to start cutting out the different components using my Big Shot. I have a metallic plate here, and then my two cutting pads. And I'm using this lighter weight paper. And I am going to be using the sentiment from the Happy Sayings die set from Whimsy, as well as the Cherry Blossom panel from Whimsy. I'm going to cut those out. And because this is a thinner paper, I'm not using a shim of any type. I don't have to, because everything cut out really crisply and cleanly the first time. So I'm just going to pop out all those extra pieces. And then for the flowers, for each flower I'm going to be cutting 4 different shapes. So I'll cut 2 of the smaller shape flower, 2 of the medium, and that will be my 4. There is a larger die that comes in the set, but I didn't use it this time. So you're going to have to run your dies through the Big Shot 2 times. And then I did cut out the leaf shape in some gold metallic paper. And originally I thought I was only going to use 2, but because I just had that little scrap of paper left over, I decided to cut the 3rd one. And it was a good thing I did, because in the end I did end up using it. So sometimes it's a good idea to cut more than you think you're going to use. So now I'm going to take one of the small petals or flower shapes and one of the medium size, and I'm going to switch out my magnetic plate for the original cutting pad that comes with your Big Shot, and I'm going to actually emboss some of the petals. This is an embossing plate from Sizzix Stampin' Up! I will try to find it. I don't know if it's retired yet. And you're going to see that I have some aqua flowers there as well. I thought I might use some aqua flowers, but in the end it just blended too much in with the card base, so I didn't use them. But you can see how that adds a beautiful texture to the flower petals. And I'm going to be layering them, and it really creates a really nice sort of interesting flower. So now I'm going to just start assembling the card. I'm going to pull out all the things that I die cut. I'll start with this cherry blossom panel and the sentiment here. Line them up, and because there's so much intricate little pieces in this, I'm going to actually glue it all down and set it aside to let it dry properly. I'm using my Zig glue pen here because this really is, I find, the easiest way to glue down die cuts that are so intricate. So you just dot the glue everywhere, cover every sort of little area, and then you place it onto the cardstock or the card base. Just make sure everything is down. I did end up having one little piece that was sticking up. I'm going to have to lift up that block and fix it. So make sure everything is facing the right way, and then you just put a block on top of it and set it aside, and it will glue down and stick nicely to the paper. So now I'm going to take the petals that I die cut, and I have a stylus, and this is just a mouse pad that I've flipped upside down, and you're going to take the flowers, and on the wrong side, so the back of the flower, you're just going to do circular motions on each petal and sort of concentrate around the edges. And then you'll flip it over, and on the right side you'll make the circles in the center. And you can see that gives it a nice flower shape. It bends the paper so that it looks like a flower. So I'm going to do that with each of the petals. So again, I'm taking the back side and sort of burnishing it, going around in circles on the back side for the petals, flipping it to the right side, and then making circles right in the middle of the flower, and that will make the petals sort of pop the right way. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be layering the two mediums together. So I'm going to have the flat one that has no texture. I didn't run it through the embossing folder. Then I'll have the one I ran through the embossing folder. Then the smaller petal that wasn't run through the embossing folder. And then the final layer will be the petal, the smaller one, run through the embossing folder. And then I'm going to stick everything together with this brad that has a little pearl inside. Now you can use any brad, you could use a button, you can use whatever you want just to make the center of the flower. And I'm going to offset the petals so that the flower appears a little fuller. So that's the first flower, and I'm going to do the same thing with more that I cut to create a second flower. Now for the sentiment, I have the happy that is die cut, but now I'm going to use the birthday, and I'm going to stamp that with some Versamark, and then I will scatter on some gold embossing powder. This is from Wow. I like to sprinkle it over a piece of scrap paper and then tap off the excess onto the paper, and then I can just pour the powder back into the jar. And of course I did make a bit of a mess, so I did have to wipe that up with a baby wipe. Then I took it and I used my heat tool to melt all the powder, so you have the birthday that's now in gold, and it sort of matches the leaves, and it matches part of the brad that I used to hold the flowers together. And now I'm just going to start playing around with exactly where I want to position everything. So once I was happy with how it looked, I started to glue everything down. And I will be using that zig glue for the sentiment here. And I will use the zig glue for the not the flowers, but the leaves as well. Just dotting some in the center of each leaf. But for the flowers themselves, because they're a little bit heavier and I really want to make sure they are going to stay onto the card, I did use some Score Pal tape. It's really strong adhesive tape, and the flowers will not budge if I use this. So now I can start positioning everything. I was mindful not to have anything sort of extend too far out from the card base in case I do want to mail this. And then I felt that it just looked too heavy on the bottom and there was not enough sort of on the top of the card, so I decided to add this extra leaf. I just trimmed off that part of the stem. I'm going to glue that down, and then it didn't look right to me, so what I did is I created another flower, but this time I just used 2 of the petals. I cut out 2 of the smaller petals, so I made a smaller flower. And I did run one through the embossing folder, and then I used a smaller brad that still matched the other brads, but just was the right size for the flower. And then my card was all done. Everything's stuck together. I fluffed out the petals a little bit, and my birthday card was done. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this encourages you to try making your own flowers for your paper crafting projects. Thanks for watching, and again, you'll find the list of supplies below this video or on my blog.